Like it.
So, Ron, what's the name of yours?
Oh boy. Uh, I suppose it's a working title, but I couldn't think of anything better. So I call it The Window in My Room. And there's, as usual, a story behind this. All right. I awoke to a light flowing through the window in my bedroom. I was about to ignore it, turn over, and go back to sleep. But as I was pulling the blanket back around my shoulders, I was suddenly struck by one shockingly terrifying thought. My bedroom doesn't have any windows. I live in a low rent tenant housing that has 4 one-bedroom apartments situated on a sublevel of a 5-story building. Below me were the building's heating and electrical units, and above me were 5 floors of other dingy, poorly maintained apartments. But it was all I could afford as a college student trying to develop independence from on campus student housing. Along with the 4 other apartments on this sublevel, my apartment was underground. There are no windows. As the polar plunge of icy chill submerged my body in goosebumps, my heart raced inside my chest. I was instantly awake. I turned back over to gaze at the mysterious window again. From my angle in the bed, I could make out the perimeter, but it seemed skewed, as it was not perfectly symmetrical. A bright white light flowed through it. Even though an ice cold fear took its grip on me, I found I could not help myself. The urge to crawl out of bed to investigate was too strong. I slowly took my feet, shivering. I pulled my blanket tighter around me. I felt the sudden urge to pee, but it would have to wait. I crept closer to the window that had randomly appeared in my subterranean apartment. I stood directly in front of it. To call it a window in the traditional sense of the word, with glass panes and cross borders, nice decorative wood edging, and billowy curtains, as one might expect to see in a normal window, would be a misnomer. This was merely an opening, the rough shape and size of a window. It was indeed slightly skewed, as the edges were not exactly 90 degrees. Through the window was a vast expanse of pure, blinding white, so bright that I could see no line separating wall from ceiling from floor. I had to squint at the brightness, but it did not take my eyes long to adjust. Just as I had felt the urge to investigate the window, I was then filled with another urge. As slowly as I had approached the window, I raised my arms to reach out. I don't know what I expected. I stuck my hand directly into the whiteness. It was cold, but not entirely unpleasant. I slid my arm further, just past the wrist. Again, cold, but not intolerable. Then further still, now up to the elbow. Then a little more, now almost up to my bicep. And then I felt it. A sudden, cold, burning sensation took over my arm like a bad case of frostbite, only infinitely worse pain. I yelped as I reflectively withdrew my arm. I clutched my arm close to my body as I rubbed it vigorously with my other hand. Once the feeling began to subside, I inspected my arm. There on my forearm were long black freeze marks that very much resembled fingers. Yet again, another wave of icy fear shot through me. I looked back to the white void, and that's when I saw them. Humanoid figures, translucent gray shadows that barely stood out against the brightness of the white. They began slowly appearing one by one. There must have been at least a dozen, with more appearing. They were getting larger, and as they drew closer, the gray of their form grew more solid. I could not make out any details. Maybe there weren't any details to make out, but they moved slowly and lumbered as they grew ever closer to the window opening. Their arms and legs were long and thin, as if Slender Man could cast a shadow. The fear was now so loud inside my head it was beating a rhythmic pattern. I ran back to my bed and jumped in, burying my head as far as I could under my blanket and pillows. But even through the blanket, I could tell the whiteness was growing brighter in my room. I forced myself to peek out from my coverings. I wish I hadn't. The gray form was now sticking a long, thin leg through the window opening, its long, slender fingers gripping the edge. Its torso was halfway through, and as it manifested itself inside my room, the gray of its form slowly blended into a deep, dark Vanta black. There was no reflection of light, no indication if its form was solid. It was a living, moving shadow, and I only wish that had been it. Now, as the form stood towering above my bed in my room, I noticed two very real, very disturbing features. Its eyes glowed with that same piercing white from within the void, and the teeth. While it had no discernible mouth, it had two long rows of sharp, pointed teeth that were blood red, and it smiled. I know I should have run, done something, screamed, yelled for help. But as more of the figures crawled through the window, its gazing, glowing eyes caused fear to paralyze me. My throat tightened up. I could not make a sound. I could only lie there in frozen, terrified helplessness as the first of the figures approached me. It reached out its long, terrible fingers as its mouth stretched open to an impossible width, the blood red of its teeth getting ever closer to my face. All I could do was watch. My urge to pee suddenly eased as I could feel the warm liquid saturated the blanket around me. But I had no time to think about that as the blackness of its mouth encompassed my head and the tips of its blood red teeth began to tear at the flesh of my neck.